Hi, I'm Rod. Welcome back to Orca Boats. So a couple of months back, I built this little workbench, nice and portable, on some wheels. So I thought I'd just run through the process of how I just put it together. Very simple, using some leftover materials from other projects in the shop and around the yard. So let's get to it. So I just gathered up some leftover 2x4s, 2x6s from other projects and began chopping them up to the lengths all needed to create my work table. So even though the 2x6s are probably a little bit oversized, I'm going to cut them to length and then rip them down to smaller pieces on my table saw. And with all of the pieces roughly cut and stacked, and because these are just your utility, 2x4s, 2x6s from the big box store, I take them to my jointer and clean up some of the edges before planing and cutting them to proper size. And then we take all of the pieces over to the table saw and clean up the rough edge, the rounded over edge of a 2x4, 2x6, so that each piece is exactly the same width. And then with all of my pieces nice and clean edges, I built two frames, rectangular frames that will create the bases, and then began to attach the legs. So here I'm just using my tapered drill bit set for the length of the construction screws, pre-drilling the holes, and then just setting the screws in to hold everything together. And with all the legs attached, it's time to install the second rectangular frame. And here I'm just measuring up from the bottom of the legs so that I can have this nice and level with the top. And this base frame will also be used for a small shelf on the bottom. And once I have the second frame where I want it, I'm just using a couple of clamps to hold it in place while I pre-drill my holes and set my construction screws. Now with the table upright, I'm ready to build the table top. So here I'm just ripping my 2x6s into the basic thickness that I think I want my tabletop to be, and then I'll run them over to the jointer and clean up those edges the same way I did to the 2x4s for the frame and base. And then just as I did for all of the framing pieces, just take them back to my table saw using the jointed edge against the fence and cleaning up the outer edge by ripping off that slightly rounded edge of the 2x6. And the final stage before gluing all of the tabletop pieces together is to just run them back through the thickness planer, so now we have all four sides nice and smooth. And now it's time to just glue all of the countertop pieces together. And I'm going to do this in 2 pieces so that the individual units are still thin enough or narrow enough that I can run them through my thickness planer for the final passing before gluing the 2 sections together to create one. So once I've got all my glue applied, I'm just going to lay them on my clamps, roughly align the ends, and leave that to harden up. Once done, I will be, trimming the ends nice and clean so that the 2 sections will fit together nicely. And so with the 2 large blocks all glued together, just going to clean them up by running them through my thickness planer 1 or 2 more times on either side to get a nice smooth surface. And then with some nicely even thickness, just take them over to the chop saw, trim the ends of both of the pieces so that I can glue the 2 blocks together to create the solid workbench top. And here I'm just attaching the set of wheels that I purchased off of Amazon. These are great little wheels. They come in a set of 4, not very expensive. They do support a good amount of weight. I wouldn't want them on probably a heavy steel workbench, but on this small unit they work just great. So now that I've got the wheels attached, I just stand it up, and you can see that it rolls really nicely around the shop wherever I need it. And by just flipping the levers up and dropping the workbench onto its 4 legs, it's a solid work surface. So now that I've got the base all constructed and the 2 halves of the countertop ready to be glued together, just going to apply some glue and clamp it up. And then the tabletop, once secured, is just screwed down to the upper frame base, a couple of construction screws set in on some angles. So the tabletop can be easily removed, repaired, restored, replaced as needed, as it gets lots of use in the shop. So with the workbench done, got a few features I've added. So I ended up putting a piece of plywood on the end. This way I can maybe add some hooks, nails in there to hang some items on. I added a sort of a box in the center here, and just leftover plywood slats on the bottom for shelves, in which I have all my buckets of various clamps of small sizes, C-clamps. On the top of the counter, I ended up capping the end with another 2x4 piece so that we're not looking at the end grain, which is susceptible to damage. And then I drilled all my dog holes in various patterns here so that I can run a long piece or short piece and use dogs and clamps to hold things down. I put my vise, I've got 2 work vices on here, one on the side and one on the end, so that if I need to, with a dog hole in it, I can clamp up a long piece. And then on the front here, I've just added a couple of drawers. So in the box, just added a couple of drawers. I got some work gloves in this one, and in the other one, just got my dogs for the dog hole, some various clamps that can be used in the thing. And of course, I've got my hold fast. So if you've not ever used or seen the use of a hold fast, you really need these in your shop on your workbench where you've got dog holes. Simply just fits in the hole, drops down onto your workpiece. It can spin around in any position, hence I've got holes all over the place. You give that a good whack, it wedges it in there. That is as solid as a rock to work on. To remove it, a couple of whacks, and it's out. So the workbench has been a super addition to the workshop, able to move it around as necessary, and for my in-feed and out-feed tables on the table saw. And I mean, it's a good solid weight to it, even when the wheels are up, when it's on its wheels. But you drop it down on onto the pedestal legs, it's as solid as a rock for working on. Great for planing, great for working without it being too wobbly. And again, thank you much to all my subscribers, as I'm nearing almost 10,000 subscribers right now to my YouTube channel. So stay tuned, because there might be some little bit of benefit surprises for the 10,000th subscriber to my YouTube channel.